Hello, crypto boys and ghouls, and welcome back to the channel, Tales from the Cryptmancer, where we feature content on play and earn games on the blockchain, such as Splinterlands. And in today's video, I wanted to have a quick conversation around a hypothetical situation that I could see playing out as it pertains to SPS with the pending release of LAN 1.5. Now, before I hop into this conversation, what I want to do is preface this in that this is not financial advice. This is just my personal opinion on a possible option that could happen here in the near future. It is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. Definitely do your own research. That being said, what am I talking about when I say that is it possible that we see an SPS boomerang effect? Well, specifically what I want to talk about is a couple of things that I believe are possible that could happen here with the release of LAN 1.5, specifically as it pertains to SPS and DEC, and I think the scenario is very possible and plausible. First off, what I want to show you is the chart here, the last 3 weeks of SPS. Specifically, you can see here on July 23rd, SPS was almost at 0.024. It was actually at 0.02387. And over the last 3 weeks, it has decreased in value here down to 0.0209. That's a price decline of a little more than 10%. And if you can imagine the price here of SPS on July 23rd of that 0.02387 cents being the top tip of a boomerang, what we have here in the chart is the potential for the price of SPS to once again dip below 2 cents and to form essentially, in this particular case, the bottom of the boomerang here in the very near future. And let me explain why I think the SPS price could be dipping below 2 cents here in the very near future and the reasonings behind that. The first thing I want to say is there's not enough DEC that is currently owned by the community to stake land in a large amount here to start LAN 1.5. And when I say large amount, I mean anything probably over 10% of land. If you've seen previous videos on the topic, you'll understand why. If you look at the top holders of the rich list of DEC, the first 6 spots here, let me increase the size of this so you can see this a little bit better. The first 6 spots here, the Splinterlands Hive wallet, a Null wallet, 2 Terablock wallets, the Splinterlands Cold wallet, and the SPS DAO. So the first 6 ranks here on the rich list of DEC really are not liquid DEC that's available for sale or for purchase. So if we start with the Cryptomancer here with almost 51 million, and we go down to, let's say, the top 36 holders, we would see that is approximately Card Auctions com here, and that's at 5.688 million DEC is what's being held here by the top 30 holders of DEC that are holding DEC liquid right now in the game. So if you're asking, well, what does 5.7 million DEC get you? We can do a quick calculation here. If we say a plot of land is, max cards would be 5 cards at 10,000 staked DEC for plot of land. Let's just use a very conservative figure and say that people aren't putting max cards on land. Let's say they're only putting, let's say, 5,000 staked DEC per card, which is 25,000 DEC for plot of land instead of the max of 50,000. We take that number here of the top, let's say 30th holder of liquid DEC, that individual could bring online 227 plots of land. Now we know a lot of region holders exist. If we go to, for example, Splinter cards here, and we go to lands here, and we go to the rich list, you can see here 200 and some plots of land is just two tracks and some change. You can see here there's a lot of people going down to 200 plots here. Would be right about here. There's 85 players here that have 200 plots or more of land, and we only saw the top 30 of liquid DEC holders in that previous calculation. So what does that probably mean? Well, it probably means a lot of landholders are keeping their DEC not liquid in the game, but probably in liquidity pools, which are earning them some return in the meantime. And you can see here the liquidity pools for DEC on Hive here. Again, let me increase the size here of this data. You can see here the two largest liquidity pools are going to be the DEC SPS liquidity pool and the Swap Hive DEC liquidity pool. The DEC pool has 455.7 million DEC paired with SPS, the equivalent amount of SPS there. And you can see that the smaller pool of the Hive DEC has 142.8 million DEC. So if we go with a theory that a large amount of landholders are holding their DEC in liquidity pools, and we'll need to pull that out at some point when land 1.5 goes live and they need to stake their cards on land to earn things like research tokens, grain, and SPS. Well, at that point in time, there's going to be a large amount of movement out of liquidity pools, or perhaps a lot of buying of DEC in the open market. Let's just say, for our example, that there are a lot of landholders that hold this DEC in liquidity pools. If they pull out their DEC from liquidity pools, and let's just use a very conservative example here, let's just say half of the liquidity pools that exist today will pull their DEC out to be able to use for land. DEC in the top two largest liquidity pools here. This is the Hive liquidity pool, and this is the SPS liquidity pool. And let's just say for conservative examples of that 598.5 million DEC paired with either Hive or SPS, let's say half of that in the liquidity pool will be pulled out for land. So you divided that by 2, and it gives you basically 300 million DEC will be pulled out of liquidity pools. In the case, if we have 299 million DEC in this example, and again, if we use 25,000 staked DEC per plot, how many plots of land, if half the liquidity pools on Hive were taken out for DEC, could be harvested or starting to work at the release of land 1.5? Conservative, again, we're using 25,000 DEC per plot, not 50,000, which is the max. And it shows us that under 12,000 plots could be brought online on day one for land, which is 11,997 here. 12,000 plots is less than 10% of the 150,000 total plots of land. Now, I know a lot of folks out there have said, well, there have been estimates saying that maybe 20% of land is brought online. But in this particular example, if half the liquidity pools are liquidated here for DEC, we still only have 12,000 plots being worked here, plus whatever plots people have DEC already in the game for, which we saw it wasn't very many. So in this particular case, let's just say to get to 20%, which would be 30,000 plots, we need at least to take the paired assets, in this case, SPS is a large chunk of that, and the DEC SPS pool, and sell that to swap for DEC. So if we look in this particular example, if we look at the DEC SPS liquidity pool, again, we pulled out half of the DEC. which means we'll pull out half of the SPS at the same time. Now, if we were to take half of that SPS and sell it and swap it into DEC, how much SPS is that going to be? Well, it's going to be 9.15 million SPS that would be taken out of the liquidity pool and then subsequently potentially sold or swapped for DEC. What kind of price impact would all of that selling of SPS have on the SPS price? Well, if they swapped it in the liquidity pool, we can take a look at this. Let's see what 9.15 million SPS would do to the price of SPS in the liquidity pools. You can see here the price impact of 9.15 million SPS is almost a 50% price impact on not only the price of DEC, but also the price of SPS. And the SPS price would obviously go towards a downward trajectory. So in that particular example here, if that were to happen, going back to this chart, if a lot of that SPS was swapped in large numbers to DEC, the SPS price would drop significantly, and then we would have essentially this boomerang being formed from the top down to the bottom here of the SPS price. Now, I want to also just say one other thing, assuming that SPS doesn't rebound immediately, which we'll talk about that potential here in just a moment. I want to talk about what happens, for example, if the SPS price dips substantially below 2 cents when land comes online, DEC is swapped out with SPS in liquidity pools. What happens after day one? Well, we know that you can't sell research tokens. We know that you can't sell grain on the open market, but you can sell SPS. Now, we also know that a lot of tract and region owners will not be able to bring their lands 100% online on day one, and land surfing is not going to be available for several weeks or months. So what happens with the earnings from land? Well, the only earnings is SPS, and there's a high likelihood, and I've mentioned this in my recent land strategy video, that I would be looking to sell SPS on the market to be able to bring more of my land online, to be able to get DEC for staking for workers, being able to buy more cards for workers, maybe buy time crystals as well for DEC. So again, the selling pressure could be that people would be selling SPS to get all these other things necessary for land, to bring more land online, which again is cards, DEC for staking, and possibly time crystals. So again, we could see further downward selling pressure on SPS to get land more efficient and more land worked. So again, this price could dip even further from the sell pressure involved. Now here's where the boomerang effect, in my mind, comes into play. Whether it's on day one of land, where we have a tremendous amount of LP swapping happening between DEC and SPS, or whether it's in the future when people are selling SPS to get cards or stake DEC, what I believe is going to happen is we're going to see this boomerang effect with SPS prices, that SPS prices begin to skyrocket and shoot up towards the other end of this boomerang. And the reason for that is because, again, what's happening with the SPS either swapping in liquidity pools or selling SPS for land assets is that DEC in turn, whether it's stake DEC or buying cards on the card market and the DEC going to Splinterlands, or whether the DEC is being burned for time crystals, that DEC is getting off the market. It's not liquid anymore. So at some point in time, if land is successful, we're going to run out of DEC liquid on the market, and it's going to drive the price higher and higher. So it's going to climb past par of 0.001 from a value perspective. And what happens when it gets past par? Well, at that point in time, it becomes conducive for bots or arbitrators in the market to burn SPS to mint more DEC, and that's when the flywheel kicks in. So depending on the scale and the time of that burning SPS for DEC and how that balances out, again, what could happen is SPS could dip, certainly below 2 cents, but then very quickly, within a matter of hours or days, it could shoot well past its high here from when SPS staking rewards kind of brought the price of SPS to almost 0.024 cents. And this is going to create this kind of slingshot of this boomerang effect for SPS, where there'll be probably one last opportunity to buy SPS cheaply, and then things could get really, really interesting as we get this boomerang effect on SPS prices. As SPS is burned, the flywheel kicks in, and then, well, it could get kind of crazy. So there's some theories for you on possibly what could happen with SPS in the near term. There could be one more opportunity to buy SPS sub 2 cents, and then it could be off to the races. We'll have to see. Again, the macro markets can do crazy things. You just never know. But this could be a plausible scenario that we could see play out in certainly perhaps the near future. So what are your thoughts? Is this something that could happen? And if so, how might you prepare for it? Looking forward to your comments in the video description below. And until next time, keep stacking those stats.